Breaking news. NATO is preparing for an attack. Troops are already right at the border. The Kremlin is trembling. NATO is holding its final rehearsal in Finland, just a step away from Russia. European and American soldiers are honing their skills ahead of the decisive battle. What specific combat scenarios are being practiced, and why are the exercises taking place so close to Russia's borders? Watch right now.
The international military exercise Southern Griffin 25 has begun in Finland. 1,600 servicemen from Europe and the US are taking part in the maneuvers. Since the beginning of August, Finland's Ministry of Defense has stated that US troops have been actively participating in exercises on Finnish territory and in the Baltic Sea since the second half of 2025, thereby increasing their military presence there. Little-known Russian sources are reporting on the alliance forces' exercises right at Russia's border. Top Russian propagandists, as well as the official Kremlin, remain silent.
In recent years, Moscow has recorded unprecedented NATO activity near Russia's western borders. The alliance expanding its operations justifies this by the need to deter aggression. The Russian side has repeatedly expressed concern over the buildup of the bloc's military presence in Europe. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has emphasized its readiness for dialogue with NATO on an equal footing, provided that the West abandons the militarization of the continent.
The Southern Griffin 25 exercises involve NH-90 transport helicopters and MD-500 light helicopters belonging to the UT regiment, as well as F-16 Hornet fighter jets in service with the Finnish armed forces. In addition, aircraft from the armed forces of various European countries and the United States will also participate in the maneuvers. After Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Finland, in order to ensure its own security, effectively joined NATO almost immediately. Now, exercises are held here on a regular basis.
The Russian Federation periodically raises the issue of a possible armed confrontation scenario with the NATO bloc and the new countries that have joined it. Specifically, this refers to Sweden and Finland. Let's at least recall those events when the so-called map of possible territorial claims by the Russian Federation against a number of Baltic countries appeared. Moreover, it was about possible Russian control over the Swedish island of Gotland.
These exercises are part of the implementation of the Agreement on Defense Cooperation between Helsinki and Washington, under which the American side will gain access to 15 Finnish military facilities. In a recent interview, Finnish President Alexander Stubb stated that the militarization and preparation of Finland for a possible invasion will continue as long as the war in Ukraine persists.
As I have always emphasized, we can't do anything about our geography. We have a history with Russia, and we will have a future with Russia. But today, of course, relations are very complicated. In fact, there are no relations because of the war. But someday, when the war is over, new relations will certainly be built. Finland will restore relations with Russia only after the war with Ukraine ends. Putin has united Europe, expanded NATO by bringing in Finland and Sweden, and has effectively increased NATO's defense spending from 2 to 5%.
The Russian Federation has repeatedly voiced its territorial claims and its intention to protect Russian-speaking populations in the Baltic countries and beyond. That is why Finland and other countries bordering the Kremlin are acting proactively. For now, Russia's main military resources are concentrated on the war in Ukraine.
Various dates are being mentioned, of course 2026 and later dates, so accordingly, NATO countries, specifically the closest neighbors, countries bordering the Russian Federation or nearby neighbors, are trying to replenish their arsenals with the types of weapons that will allow them to actively counter possible Russian aggression.
Recently, the US deployed 3 B-1B bombers to Norway for NATO exercises to practice coordination with allies, test combat readiness, and carry out a number of joint missions. The Southern Griffin 25 exercises on the border with Russia will continue until September 12th.
Urgent. Zelensky has delivered a verdict on Putin. The Kremlin has blown up the negotiations. The latest massive shelling of Kyiv has changed everything. The Kremlin's secret plan has been revealed. Here's why they did it. How did the pro-Ukrainian coalition react to this, and what is now the fate of the negotiations? Watch now for all the details.
At least 19 people have been killed, 4 of them children. More than 40 people have been injured. The Russian army launched 600 drones and missiles of various types at Ukrainian territory. The largest strike targeted Kyiv. From the Kremlin, where they pretend in front of Trump to want to stop the war, came the message that Russian military forces had delivered a successful strike on military infrastructure. The youngest NATO militant, whom Russians keep imagining, is 2 years old. Among the damaged infrastructure are a train, a cafe, homes, and the European Union's representation in Kyiv. Kaja Kallas summoned the Russian chargé d'affaires to the EU for a reprimand. Ursula von der Leyen also condemned the Russians.
This was also an attack on our delegation. I just spoke with our deputy ambassador, and I am relieved to report that none of our staff were harmed. Last night's attack took place in the immediate vicinity of the diplomatic mission. The presence of our union's representation is yet another grim reminder of what is at stake.
This shows that the Kremlin will stop at nothing to terrorize Ukraine, blindly killing civilians, men, women, and children, and even targeting the European Union.
The British Council in Kyiv was less fortunate. The institution reported that after the Russian army's attack, one employee was hospitalized with injuries. The strike was condemned on social media by British Prime Minister Starmer. The president of the European Commission assured partners and Ukrainians that Europeans will soon discuss how to direct frozen Russian assets to military support for the defense forces, and that Russians will pay for their aggression and face a 19th package of sanctions. However, it is unclear when this will happen. Ukrainians remember how long and painfully the partners struggled over the 18th package. By the way, the Hungarians, who blocked the decision-making after the strike, did not even offer their condolences. On that day, they imposed a ban on entering the Schengen zone for the commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Brovdi, a Ukrainian of Hungarian descent known as Magyar. A response from him and from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was not long in coming.
If a Russian pipeline is more important than Ukrainian children killed by Russia this morning, that is moral decay. Hungary has ended up on the wrong side of history. We will respond in kind.
President Zelensky also condemned the reaction of Orban's team. For the first time in his address, he also appealed to China.
Russia chooses ballistics over the negotiating table, chooses to continue killing rather than end the war. And this means that Russia is still not afraid of the consequences. Russia still takes advantage of the fact that at least part of the world turns a blind eye to murdered children and looks for excuses for Putin. We are waiting for China's reaction and to see what will happen. China has repeatedly called for the war not to be expanded and for a ceasefire. This is not happening because of Russia.
As for Hungary, the call to respond and condemn is most likely not directed at Orban because he doesn't understand any signals except those coming from Moscow and Washington. In my opinion, this is actually an appeal to Washington so that Trump, as some media and insiders report, after a certain phone conversation with Orban regarding changing his position on Ukraine's accession to the EU, could hear the Ukrainian president's call and perhaps reach out to Orban once again. Because we haven't seen any drastic changes and we would like to see decisive action. And as for China, this is an attempt to bring into the public sphere the fact that China, while not very openly, is nevertheless a supporter of Moscow, and we understand this. And with each passing year, China's support for Russia only increases. And it's worth recalling the statement that Russia cannot lose this war.
The large-scale strike on Ukraine was carried out by the Russians on the eve of the Ukrainian delegation's meeting with Special Envoy Witkoff in New York, who, since Trump entered the Oval Office, has been a frequent guest at the Kremlin. Analysts believe that it is not worth expecting any reaction from the American side to this Russian démarche. Neither intimidation with tariffs and sanctions, nor the signing of a deal over natural resources as a guarantee of protection stopped the Russians from destroying American business in Ukraine and terrorizing Ukrainians.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Shock! Ukraine has unveiled a weapon of retribution. It will destroy Moscow. This nightmare will be a sentence for the Kremlin. Ukrainian manufacturers have presented a new missile with a range of 1,000 kilometers. This is a complete game changer. Could it be that the Ukrainian armed forces no longer need American missiles? And how will this weapon change the course of the war? Watch all the details right now.
For the first time, Ukraine showcased its long-range Neptune on Independence Day. The official portal of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Zbroi, has for the first time revealed the new Ukrainian missile, the long-range Neptune, with a range of up to 1,000 kilometers. We are Ukrainians, we have independence, and we have weapons. The missile is based on the R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missile, which was used to sink the flagship of the occupiers' Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva, at the time. Moskva is the first. 2 holes, painoish. She'll list to the side. She'll list to the side. Compared to its anti-ship counterpart, the long-range Neptune has been increased in size and range and is also capable of striking land targets.
The missile that was clearly shown in the footage is significantly longer and possesses a larger diameter. Well, since, let's say, the naval Neptune has a range of 280 kilometers, and here it's 1,000 kilometers, they had to seriously redesign the fuselage. It should be noted that our engineers took the simplest approach. That is, they simply increased the geometric dimensions of the missile, thereby increasing the fuel capacity.
At the same time, a fake story authored by the Kremlin's troll factory leaked into the media. Supposedly, the Trump administration is suspending deliveries of Patriot, HIMARS, and Hellfire missiles to Ukraine. The Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation stated that there is no suspension of aid. And most importantly, as of today, Ukraine is much less dependent on American missiles. Why is Trump's blockade of ATACMS no longer so frightening for Ukraine? Washington may have overestimated the impact of American long-range missiles, while Kyiv is strengthening its own defenses. Ukraine's independence in carrying out long-range strikes on Russian territory is a result of a significant increase in Ukrainian production.
Ukraine has successfully developed and is now mass-producing at least two distinct types of very long-range, indeed ultra-long-range unmanned aerial vehicles, commonly known as drones. These specific models are identified as the Lyuti and the FP1. Yes, the FP1. The FP1 has a range of 1,600 kilometers, while the Lyuti drone originally had a range of about 1,000 kilometers when its landing gear was fixed. Now, with retractable landing gear and an increased fuel supply, it has a range of 1,200 kilometers.
The scale of production allows for the daily launch of about 100 long-range drones targeting military and energy sites within the Russian Federation. Just in the past few days, Ukrainian drones have successfully struck the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara region.
Do you see it?
I don't see it. Looks like that's it.
This is the final one. That's all.
That's all for now. It hit the target, right? Yes, it certainly did.
As well as the Ust-Luga seaport in the Leningrad region.
Film it, film the group. You can see how it's flying.
And of course, we can't forget about the Ukrainian Pink Bird, the Flamingo cruise missile, whose appearance has significantly shifted the balance of power in the Russian skies.
And if we use the Flamingo, it can even reach Omsk. There you go. That means all Russian missile factories and 90% of Russian oil refineries, more than 95 Russian oil refineries, 90% of enterprises in the Russian military-industrial complex will be within striking range.
The main advantage of the Ukrainian Bird is its simple production, a strike range of up to 3,000 kilometers and an impressive warhead, 1,150 kilograms.
When a missile, like the Flamingo, if a drone hits, it causes damage. If a missile like that hits with explosives with a warhead of 1,150 kilograms as stated, then we're not talking about damage. We're talking about complete destruction. If it's an oil refinery, for example, there won't be any repairs or searching for spare parts, just scrap metal collection. And if it's an industrial facility, some kind of workshop, right? So you just clear the site and build a new workshop because repairing it is out of the question. There will be a crater 20 to 25 meters wide.
The fate of Russian oil refineries, military factories, airfields, and other defense industry facilities now depends little on Washington's opinion or position.
That's all for now. For more fiery news from the front, tune in to the next episode.